I'm so excited to be talking to today's guest. Former model and now owner of Bridge Models in London, my agency, is Charlotte Griffiths, and I'm going to be talking to her today and finding out more about the woman behind one of the UK's top curve model agencies. So the tables are going to be turned on Charlotte today, and I'm looking forward to finding out a lot more about her. So welcome, Charlotte.
Hi, Rachel.
Hello, cheers, lovely. Hello.
Cheers, cheers, cheers.
Lovely to see you.
Lovely to see you too.
So how's lockdown looking for you?
Lockdown, you know what? I'm actually quite enjoying it. I'm enjoying the time to sort of have a new routine. I'm enjoying the time sort of to myself to crack on. And I just constantly, one of my worst traits is I have no issue coming up with to-do lists. So I've turned into a bit of a handy Andy and a DIY expert at the moment.
Oh, wow.
So it's good fun. I'm enjoying it, but I'm not sure. I'll probably regret half the things I've been trying to attempt to do on my house in the meantime. No one's seeing it though, so no one can see how bad it is.
That's not going to show up. It's not going to show up on your Instagram feed.
No, exactly. You'll see carefully placed plants where I might have put a picture up wrong or done something terrible. So I'll find good ways of making it appear fine.
So no, it's going. Who doesn't know you? How do you describe yourself, and how would you describe Bridge Model Agency?
For people who know me, and I'm going to try and think of affectionate terms here, they would probably describe me as very motivated, almost, to a point of frustration to others. They would probably describe me as I'm quite impatient. The motivation, I think, comes in hand with not being very patient with others. So I do struggle with that quite a lot because I'm definitely a doer. And probably one of my other traits is I'm very, I guess, empathetic. So I tend to take on a lot of friends, family, other people's sort of emotions, and that can be sort of, I think in some ways it's a lovely trait, but it can be very all-consuming. It's very hard to understand sometimes why you're feeling a certain way about something when you feel like you very easily resonate with others. So yeah, I would probably say, those are probably the three main traits that impact me on a day-to-day basis, that sort of make up my character, so to speak.
This is great fun for me because I get to turn the tables today and find out more about you. It's lovely.
I know, it's really strange. Normally I'm contacting all of you guys for interviews and going through all the questions, and now it's, like you said, it's the other way around. So putting me to the test.
Yes. So how would you describe Bridge Models Agency?
I would describe Bridge, and I try to not use those those buzzwords or those terms, but I would really describe it as a management agency. What I really enjoy about it is that we are boutique. We don't have hundreds and hundreds of models on the books. So what I do really enjoy is, progressing individual careers. It's not a situation where the models just sort of, sit on a board and get picked out occasionally for bookings. I really feel like we're in the business of trying to develop individual goals and passions, and we spend just as much time on, press interviews, personal achievements that, that you guys might want, as we will do on the paid bookings, the contracts, etc. So I really feel that, over the years we've found our style in sort of being a full management agency. We do aim on, bridging the gap, so to speak, between, the straight size market and the curve industry. But really, I try to navigate away from sort of using those terms too much, because my main aim really is to just have it be an agency that represents models. And, if you really want to be diverse, I feel like using certain terminology that creates its own categories, like plus size and curve, etc., is almost, causing the problems itself. So I really it's a tough one. I can see both sides. You know, it's been a discussion for many years. You know, is plus size a term that's empowering to sort of own, and I can see both sort of view sets on it. But ideally, a point that I personally and as a business we'd love to get to is that, you know, we're a modeling agency, and that we just have a diverse board of models, and that it doesn't need to be categorized. So you'll notice we don't really use, as a company, we try not to use that vocabulary on our social media or, you know, any news articles that we do or etc. We really try and sort of make it, I feel that way, as a social sort of responsibility, you start to drip feed that it's normal, that it should be sort of, you know, recognized. I feel that the more you use certain words and terms to create its own different category, then the harder it will be, especially, you know, on these social platforms, for people to recognize that, you know, you'll never go on and open up, you know, Vogue magazine and be like, this straight size model is, you know, it would never be used. So I feel like start as you need to go on in that way. So that's really what we try to do, and really just promoting, you know, health in all shapes and sizes. You know, it's not a size. We're not here to shock. We're just here to diversify. So it's a balance. It's a balancing act. But a full management agency is the part that I really enjoy, because it's more personal, and it means more when you build the relationships with the models and the talent that you get to work with, because it just means so much more when you get those big goals and those opportunities ticked off their bucket list, really.
And you do.
Yeah.
So let's go back to before you started the agency. So how old were you when you actually started modeling?
Oh God, I was 5'8" at the age of 14. So literally it was just because I was tall that I got picked up to do some little runway events, like sort of local area stuff for, you know, local brands. And then I did sort of showroom. It never went anywhere huge, because it was sort of something I was pursuing as and when on the side. So 14, I did my first event, and then it was sort of as and when, maybe 1 or 2 events a year. And then I got to 18, and puberty had sort of hit. I was a bit of a late bloomer. I got 5'8", and then everything else came later for me. And so later on in life, you know, puberty hit, and you know, I developed curves, and I just wasn't fitting into the clothes and the sample sizes. And I remember the last event I did, I went to a fitting, and I had to wear a pencil skirt, and it was one of those pencil skirts that the seam goes up on the back. So instead of at the side. And it just wouldn't go over my bum, and it was humiliating. And I remember an email going out to everybody in the show like 2 days later, saying from the organizer, saying, you know, you really can't be fluctuating sizes. And we all knew it was sort of targeted at me, but it went out to everybody, and I was just, it really, really, really affected me, and I was just devastated. And I was still booked to do the show. They had to find another outfit for me. Still booked to do the show, and did the runway event, and really, it was just, I just fell out of love with it. I went to the toilets backstage, and some of the girls, I always remember this, some of the girls were eating, I think I probably talked to you about this before actually, were eating toilet paper to feel full. So that email wasn't, even though I knew I was the only one that didn't fit the clothes 2 days before the show, so I knew that was sort of targeted towards me. It went out to everybody. It clearly, you know, worried the other girls, who all looked great and hadn't, you know, looked fantastic in their clothes. And they were in the toilets just not having any water, and they were just feeling so hungry. And one of them had read on some silly website that it was a way to sort of curb cravings, and they were just eating that. And I just drew a line under it that day. because it was just such a slippery slope for me mentally. I was like, couldn't do it really. So and it is hard, and it's so that was really the small amount of time that I was in the industry, not even doing big campaigns or anything like that, small projects, and I probably did a handful of maybe 12, 15 jobs. And those events alone had such a big effect on me at a time when my body was changing.
Yeah, I'm not surprised.
Yeah, I think everybody thinks that puberty hits you and by 20 your body is where it's at, but my body changed so much from 18 to 25. And it continues to change. That it was a kind of insecurity that I didn't really need at the time, and I had a strong enough sort of family network to sort of notice that it was affecting me, for me to sort of go, okay, I'm going to take a step back and work behind the scenes, really. So that's how that all started.
Well, you are lucky that you had that kind of inside sense in yourself that you knew this wasn't right for you, and also that you had your family support, because I can imagine so many girls in that situation carry on, and really that's when they do develop these massive issues.
Yeah,
it's quite scary, really. Do you think it's changed, or do you think it's still like that underground?
No, I still, I still have a lot of friends sort of in the, if we're going to say, straight size market. So I still think those sort of, we'll say the old school ways are still in place. I think the change is really going to start to happen when people are getting more involved, who are passionate about it, in the sort of more managerial sort of roles. The people that I was hearing those comments from, I know are still in the industry today. So I know that those comments will still, they won't have changed their outset, their look. And, if they've been in the industry for, 40 years, for example, there's an element where they're only human, and they've been brought up that way, and they've been brought up with that sort of dialogue and those, thinking that it's okay to sort of relay those terms without any consequences, and almost thinking that that's them doing their job. So I think until you get that new wave of, people who are working their way up in the industry at the moment, sort of having that power and control, I think it might take a little bit longer, because old dogs, new tricks, etc., which is disappointing. But some people just sort of have those habits ingrained in them. So unfortunately, I do know that those people are still working in the industry. But yeah, like you said, it I think a lot of people will still be experiencing it. And I think social media as well can have a lot of impact on, it's so much easier to sort of Google a stupid diet now, or to sort of have a look at tips, and that's what these girls were doing, and that was over 10 years ago. They were in a toilet, and they were on their mobile phones, and they were showing me this article whilst explaining they were doing what they were doing. So I can imagine that's only more accessible now.
So when you stopped modelling, how soon after that did you decide that you would like to get more involved in the behind the scenes and in management?
To be honest with you, it was pretty quickly afterwards. I started looking at internships. I found the process quite fascinating behind the scenes, and I'd made a lot of contacts in the industry. So sort of a little bit after that, I was starting to apply for internships. I got one. So that show was in March, and I got an internship in September. And then, to be honest with you, you have all these different areas of the industry, and sometimes, I'll probably be relaying a lot of negatives, but I think at the same time they're incredibly useful to have these experiences. But my first internship, it was advertised as a fashion modeling agency. I went in for 2 interviews, and they offered me the job, and I was so excited. I moved to London. I was like, yeah, absolutely, this is what I'm going to do. And day one I went in, it was an agency, had an office in Fulham, and I started to see I saw these images in the office that I hadn't seen when I went into the interview, of like FHM, and all these old sort of magazines. And I was sitting down about midday. I realized that they were a glamour modeling agency.
Oh.
But they were trying to, and I turned around and I was like, I'm sorry, I thought this was a fashion agency, and the website, and they had this back end website.
Oh no.
And I was like, oh my God. And I'd made this big move to London, and it was, it was one of those experiences where, the industry, as you know, Rachel, it's, people will turn around and are very good at fluffing their roles and their job titles and what they're doing, and yeah, they were wanting to sort of move away from it. However, this seedy side of the business was sort of still going on. So I was, to be honest with you, I was very humiliated. I cracked on, and I stuck with the internship. I'd moved to London. I'd got this flat. I said, this is what I was doing, and they'd said to me, oh no, we're moving away from it. We're not booking that anymore. And then I was there for 3 months, and one of the things that sort of does frustrate me about this industry is, it's such a desirable career path for so many people that a lot of businesses, I think, take advantage of that with internships.
Yeah.
In regards to, they're unpaid. And very quickly, I wasn't doing an internship anymore. I had a job title. I wasn't allowed to tell the models I was an intern. I was sort of asked to fluff my job description up and my experience. And then I was having solo meetings with clients and the models on behalf of the team, and this was, you go with the flow. You don't know any different, and you don't know your worth. And it was but I'd learned a lot. I was thrown in the deep end in that way, but it can attract a lot of abuse in so many different areas, whether you're being a model on a runway, or whether you're desperate to get into the industry and you do an internship for a business. You've got to be very cautious of who you're sort of working with and the experiences you get. Yeah. So, and then I was lucky enough, I met a colleague who started at the company as well, realized within 2 weeks what I had already known, but was smart enough to get out. Went to another company. She told me about a position there. And then I became a booker at Hughes, which was a modeling agency that came over from Australia, and they sort of specialized in the curve industry and the plus size market. And it wasn't one I'd heard of before then, but I had been, working with the glamour sector. I had been working with a lot of, curvy girls who, were very insecure about their size. So it was really interesting to sort of go into this new niche market. And I loved it. And I just became so passionate about it. And the people that I was working with and the brands that I was working with was just something that I soaked up like a sponge, really. So yeah, and that was really how I found this industry and that market. And I absolutely loved it. And really it was such an amazing experience working for Cheryl, who ran Hughes. And when she retired from the business, it was absolutely the right time for her to do so. So that's when myself and Beth had a conversation and really wanted to do things on our timeline, really. And too many gin and tonics happened, and
all the best ideas. All the best ideas come from a gin and tonic.
I think we kind of played chicken with each other a little bit. She talked to me about the idea and really sold me on it. And we had such a great working relationship where we really, relied and trusted on each other, that when she sort of talked to me about it, it was something that I was like, how can I not give this a go? And really being able to do things, in this industry to your own standard and your own morals and your own ethics was something that I was really craving from the majority of different experiences. Like every other company I'd been at, I'd experienced something that I would have liked to have done differently.
Yeah.
And really that's how it all got started.
And what kind of reaction did you get from the industry once you decided that's what you were going to do when you were set out solely as that, as representing the kind of plus middle size?
Yeah. I mean, what I think is really helpful is that we both had, a reputation in the industry beforehand. So a lot of clients and brands, we had really good relationships with. I think, going into the industry and talking about, and again, it was trying to find that balance. We knew we didn't want to shout about being different and niche. It was this weird sort of, ethical balance of going, yes, the models are a variety of different shapes and sizes, and we're really proud of it, but we also don't want to contradict ourselves and have to shout about it. You should just think they're beautiful and stunning, and they'll do great for your campaign. So it was really finding your own marketing voice when sort of talking to the clients that rings true to the business, and the approach was really great. I think what we were trying to do is, and what we still do, is, like I said, have a smaller board of models where we have the time and the attention to, talk to the models, every other day, to catch up on measurements, Polaroids, to sort of really have that one-on-one feedback with them. Whereas other agencies I've been at before, whether straight size, curve, had sort of gone for the tactic of, let's have hundreds and hundreds of models on the board, and we'll throw 20 at a job, and if one of them sticks, great, we booked a job.
Yeah.
Now, what we were experiencing as the bookers is you can only do that for so long. The clients get frustrated. You could be suggesting a model for a job and not realize they've dyed their hair pink because you haven't spoken to them in 6 months, and you lose your integrity professionally with clients because you're wasting their time. Their time's really valuable as well. So very quickly, that reputation and that standard that we had when somebody would get in touch, that trust was there in us to say, yes, no, we know that, Rachel will be there absolutely at, 9 a.m. tomorrow. This is 100% what she looks like. She hasn't got a tattoo on her forehead overnight. It's absolutely fine. All sorts of random things like that. And because we would have that relationship with both the clients and the models, you had the time to have those conversations, to go and see the clients and sit down and discuss what they're wanting, which you just didn't have the time to do because you had too many models, too much admin work to do. And I think the quality just gets really affected by that. So I think the response was really positive because we didn't try to allude to being bigger than we were by having 200 models by launching, but only 2 team members, whereas we've grown the team and we've actually only increased our models by 20% over 6 years, and we're not going to go any bigger than we are now. So I think keeping that and maintaining that has been really important for us. Just growing our team of bookers, but keeping the models consistent in size, really.
That's what I love about being with you, is that personal touch. I do know that you know me, and I feel like you know me, and I'm not just a picture on a board and a number. And I can imagine in some of the bigger agencies, I'm sure they do really well, but they sometimes, like you say, there's you're 1 in 200 women, and you lose that sense of team, I think, and it's nice to feel part of a team.
And I think.
Really like.
Yeah, and I'm so pleased you feel that way. And I think especially when you do deal with a niche market, time is of the essence, and you want somebody who is, going to be able to push you, and where you're going to stand out when suggestions are being made on your behalf, from the brand and from the agency. And I think, like I said, having that personal touch is great. It gives us a lot more job satisfaction as a team. It's an industry that has a high turnover of staff, but like Mary and Amber have been with me for 3 years. I think they're going to be here for a very long time. Kind of a bit unheard of, really. So I'd like to think, you might want to interview them and they'll say something completely different. But I'd like to think that you get more job satisfaction from that, because when we find out, that somebody's got the job, it's such an amazing feeling, because you are rooting for everybody, because you do know everybody.
Yeah.
So level of job satisfaction for us as well is really important, because it's a lot of highs and lows, and we fully appreciate that it's a lot more up and down for you guys. So to have that relationship when we're telling you quite vulnerable information, you know, we try to not underestimate that being told you haven't got the job doesn't get any easier, no matter who you are. So, you know, to have somebody who you can have that conversation with where it is disappointing, I think is important as well, just mental health wise as well. It's a very strange industry to be in, definitely.
Yeah, it is. It's a real roller coaster. I would never have been able to manage it mentally in my 20s. I think it's it's for younger girls. It must be really hard.
Yeah, no, I think that's really interesting, and it is. Yeah, it's one of those things that you know, you can try and have, you know, a blasé you know, approach to it and go, oh, you know, maybe next time. But we're all human, and it's all, you know, all adds up really. So yeah, I think it is really interesting to sort of see the different viewpoints to it, and like I said, experience is definitely integral to sort of try and have a more positive outlook, really.
Yeah. So have you seen in the last 5 years a shift in the fashion industry and the move towards being genuinely more diverse?
Yeah, I've been really definitely these 5 years more than the 5 before. You know, it's really picked up momentum. I think what's been really positive, you know, is brands seeing the value. I think the introduction of the menswear market and being able to sort of have diversity for men as well has elevated the conversation for women as well. Like they go hand in hand and they complement each other really well. So, you know, in the last 5 years, so we launched the men's board in 2016. And, you know, that's picked up so much quicker than the women's market was going on for about 30 years beforehand. You know, but I think by introducing the men's market, by opening up the conversation with men as well, it, you know, it normalizes it. It sort of brings the topic to the forefront. And I think it's just, I think across the world, you know, you've seen a huge range of diversity. So beforehand, you'd probably see Germany, maybe, you know, 10 years ago, Germany was really sort of leading the forefront in the curve market for women, and they were really sort of ahead of the game. But now you just see so much more production and investment in the US, you know, same back in Australia, you know, and a lot more in the UK. So just within 5 years, I think a value's definitely been placed on the market. And we are starting to see, you know, a lot more models in editorials. I mean, there's always ways to go. I'm trying to be sort of, you know, positive about it, but I still think, you know, ageism for women is still such a huge area that's still, in my mind, so far behind.
I agree.
You know, so you'll see some areas get elevated, you know, and you'll see that happen, and you'll think, great, fantastic, and then you'll look in another market and you'll go, well, hang on, wonderful that, you know, there's a curve model in Harper's Bazaar, you know, this month she looks fantastic, but she's about 22, you know, so you can't have everything. I do appreciate that, but those milestones that we're seeing sort of happen, I feel, you know, there's other ways to diversify the market and not just sort of have those different brackets. So still a long way to go. But yeah, I think in the last 5 years, the momentum that's picked up, you know, in different territories across the world has been really, really interesting.
Because now you're in New York, have you noticed a difference in attitudes in the industry from America to the UK? Are we behind the US in attitude, or are we?
We're actually quite far forward. So in regards to the attitude towards the market, you know, there's that term that we sort of use in the industry that you'll be really sort of familiar with, which is sort of the in-between model, you know, where brands aren't quite sure if they, you know, they just go from sort of the straight size, you know, 8 to 10, and then they might jump straight to sort of a size 18. So there's still a market that's quite underrepresented. Now that's still very much in play in the US. So a lot of the briefs that we get through, a lot of the brands, you know, for the sort of the bigger, well-known sort of chains, you sort of get that segregation. Whereas I think in Europe and the UK, you've seen, you know, especially in the last 3 years, a lot more diversity with the in-between sizes and sort of really showing, you know, variety of women in different shapes and sizes, also different heights. And there, I think in Europe especially, we're a lot more forward thinking when it comes to diversity with different ethnicities and heritages. I think you still see it being, you know, a few steps behind with the US. So it's interesting to have that outlook and to sort of view what's changing. I think a lot of people can think New York and the US is really far ahead in the fashion industry, but when it comes to diversity, I think you see it dripping in a lot more from Europe to the UK, and it sort of it changes. I think change can happen a lot quicker here than it can in the States. So it is quite interesting to sort of view it across both boards.
Yeah. So go back to the straight size and then the in-between size. So in the industry, what is the actual cut-off point for a straight size model? Is it a size 10?
It's a size 8 for the majority of the sort of straight size agencies, but then the hip can be a size 10.
Okay.
So depending on that, really the measurements, what we tend to find, so we've got some models on our board who have been at straight size agencies before, and then again, you know, we sort of talked about bodies changing in their 20s, you know, they get a little bit curvier. Really, if their bra size goes bigger than a C, then they'll struggle with sample sizes. So, you know, the measurements have got to be very proportionate all the way down. So if they sort of have a cut bigger than a C, then, you know, we all know shirts, you know, if we try to button shirts don't seem to actually be made for
no, mine are always sewn in the middle.
Yeah.
Always.
And see, I think you're wearing a polo suit jumpers. More comfortable. I'm wearing exactly the same. So really, it's more to do with those proportions and heights really. So 8 is a cut off, but if they've got you know, a good sort of hourglass figure, then you can get some that have a size 10. But as we all know, you know, and it's always driven me a little bit bonkers. You know, with women, we have dress sizes 8, 10, but then, you know, men, if you go to buy trousers, you buy the measurement. So you'll buy a 32 waist. Yeah. It's not as open to interpretation. Whereas I feel like half the confusion for us women and half of the disappointment is the artistic license that brands will take. Yeah. Interpretation, you know, and some of the, you know, we'll do some bookings for fittings and we'll see the measurement requirements come through from one brand saying, oh, we're looking for a size 12, and then we'll see another brand come through, and you see it black and white, pure as day, that they're inches apart really. So there's a lot more I'll stick to my term of artistic license.
Yeah, it comes very diplomatic. Yeah, and I don't know why it still shocks me, but it does. But it's but yeah, it shouldn't do. I shouldn't be surprised, but I am. What's been a highlight so far for you with Bridge? Has there been real moments where you've just thought, yes, this is why I set it up?
Oh gosh, yeah. And you know what? You let them go by too quickly because the industry moves so quickly. As you know, people get confirmed for jobs, you know, 24 hours beforehand or something. You know, so. You know, when something wonderful happens, it's great news, but then on to the next because it's such a quick moving industry. But I love those. I love that element of it. So, you know, moments where we've had. I remember Mahalia coming. She joined the agency in like 2015. She'd been in London for like 3 months from Australia, and you know, she's got. So much passion for the market, so much passion for the industry, and you know, she felt like she was really struggling in Australia to sort of break that diversity, you know, barrier. And she'd been here 3 months, and we had a brief come through. We weren't sure what the client was. Sometimes we get this where, you know, they won't disclose. And they were saying, you know, we want some casting tapes, and we want the models to sort of dance around to some music, singing along, and then they get a phone call, they've had some bad news and they're really upset. So I was like, okay, maybe it's a TV commercial, or maybe it's wasn't really sure. Mahalia did a video for us. We sent them all off, and she was selected, and it turned out to be for Selfridges. Had nothing to this day, I just think the casting director might have been a little bit bored and just had a bad day, and wanted to really, push the boat out on that one. But it was for Selfridges, and she was the first plus size model for that campaign. And when they were launching their body studio in the store on Bond Street, we went along for the launch day for her to do press. And as amazing as it was for her, the feeling of walking into the store with actually getting to be there with one of you guys when that moment's happening for you. And she was, 3 stories high on, these giant imprints on the side of the walls and advertising, and absolutely everything they put so much work into this launch, and to be there with her seeing that was just the most amazing moment, because it meant so much to me to be able to book it. It was an amazing opportunity, and it was great to see, but to see what it meant to her, to see herself in this very prestigious department store on Bond Street, in her lingerie, looking incredible, and to see them be so proud of the campaign as well. You can see some brands, champion diversity, but maybe it could appear like a token booking sometimes, where you sort of see a variety of models and you think, great, well, they've been inclusive and diverse with shapes and sizes, but what Selfridges really did is they were proud of it, and they shouted it. And I think when you see that much investment go into it, that within itself was a really nice feeling. So that was wonderful. Because so much of it, we're giving you guys the good news, but we're not there when you're doing the jobs, or we're imagining you on set, or we're thinking, oh God, how's it going? Or we'll see little behind the scenes snaps, but we're at our desks. Our bit's not that glamorous. We get excited for you, but to be there with you when you see yourself, in a campaign, in a store window, those are the moments that are sort of robbed from us quite a lot. So that one sticks out to me, because she hadn't seen any of it beforehand, and we both just walked in, and I think probably both felt like little girls that had to get professional very quickly and just go, right, okay, press in the corner. We'll scream on the inside, we'll go to the toilet, we'll jump up and down like kids, and then we'll go back out doing wonderful.
So, I know how passionate and how driven you are about the business. So where do you want to be in 5 years' time?
Oh, I would really love to see, just the expansion as a business in whole going, having more investments for not only the men's board, for the women's market, really sort of being able to diversify the kind of jobs you guys do. I don't want it to just be, specializing in, these niche brands. I want it to sort of work across, a variety of, lifestyle, beauty, high fashion. I'd love to be able to look into producing our own events. I've very much felt that if you're not seeing the content that you want, or if you're not seeing the change that you want to see, I want to be able to try and facilitate that, so that's really where I kind of see Bridge going, is, we're not restricted by being part of, another conglomerate in any way. And that is really why I set up Bridge, that you can have the time and you can action things on your own on your own schedule and deadline. So I think in 5 years' time, a lot more investment into events and production of the content with the brands that we want to see doing it, and just being able to facilitate the industry and moving quicker in any way that we can help do that, whether that's expanding into working with more artists and photographers and creatives, sort of building that community so that we can facilitate that change faster, and that network that can produce that content. So really, having a move into the space of actually producing what we want to see is something that I would really love to sort of expand into with the company.
That sounds exciting.
Yeah,
Look forward to.
Yeah, if you can't, well, it's the exact same reason that you're sort of seeing it, Rachel. It's that if you're not hearing the content you want to hear, if you're not seeing it, and if you're not feeling inspired for a period of time because you feel a little bit isolated in your view on things, then it's as wonderful and as much as we enjoy the day-to-day, we are in a creative market industry, and I think myself and the whole team are very creative, and being able to facilitate those opportunities for our models and in any way, shape or form, through our relationships with brands, etc., then I think we have the power to be able to do that. And I think it's and like I said, it's a creative market, so to be creative in the space and to actually action what we talk about seems important, and just seems worthwhile, but also a lot of fun. So
watch this space.
Yeah, exactly. Watch this space. Watch my to-do list get bigger.
You said it on here now, that's it.
Exactly. I like the level of commitment. I like it.
What do you look for in a model? What makes a good model in your opinion?
What makes a good model in my opinion? You know what, we get hundreds of applications a day, which I'm very grateful for. And when we're going through the applications, we're looking for variety. As I mentioned, our board is concise, so we're not really looking for models to compete with each other. If something isn't working, or if we're not able to get a model with certain looks or measurements or a certain brief or requirement work, then we need to work on that. So we try, one of the things I'm quite strict on is not having that element where the models are competing. So when we're looking at applications, making sure that we're really diversifying across the board, and through sort of looking through content, whether it's a new face, whether a model that's quite established, we'll get models who might want to move agencies, models who might be starting out. It's somebody who has the understanding of what it really takes. So we really take the time when we sort of narrow down a selection and we see a model that's got a different look, and somebody that we think will add variety to something that our clients haven't seen in a long time. Then it's not just enough to have the measurements and the looks and the pictures, and you can hear people say that and say it's not just enough to be beautiful or to have great measurements, but really it's not, because to have a really good understanding and motivation for the industry is what's gonna get that model to go far. So often or not, what we used to do beforehand is we'd go through the applications and then we'd have interviews where people come in. Now we've gone, telephone interviews, then interviews afterwards to sort of hone it down, because actually it is a process where it's a working relationship, because we're so hands-on with you guys, and because we really value good communication. To be able to find a model that would work within Bridge is actually to try and find somebody who is looking for that kind of management style. There might be a lot of models who want to get into the industry or have experienced a different kind of style where they might be sitting on a board and they just want to be contacted when they've got a job, and they don't want to invest too much in their portfolio, or thanks for the feedback, but I'm okay, I've got another job that I'm doing, it's not my full-time career, etc. So really it's actually about finding somebody beyond the pictures and measurements that fits our management style, that's worked for us, and who wants to be, you know, assisted in the way that we want to assist.
Yeah.
And sometimes, you know, you could have a great model who looks amazing, and you'll have a call and you'll talk about what we do, and you know, the kind of investment that we sort of expect back from the model, and you'll figure out very quickly, you know, on that call that it's not the right fit. And it is very much about that relationship and finding out sooner rather than later, so you're not sort of wasting anybody's time, really. So that's really one of the things that we look for: somebody who wants to take our guidance on board, who has the time to action, you know, what they really want to achieve, and who's able to do so. You know, there's a lot to, it's an industry that is very hard to get into. It's not one that you apply for a job and then you get a booking. As you know, it's one that you have to constantly sort of reinvent yourself and reassess it, and if something's not working, we've got to change it again, and that might be sort of, you know, every 3 months or so, and it takes a certain passion to have the motivation to want to do that, and you can find that out quite quickly on a call, really, when you're talking to a lot of the applicants. So finding somebody who is just as much going to invest time in us and their career as we are in them is really such a huge priority, because we do want to take the time. So if our time's going to be split and we're going to be investing it in taking on a new model, we want to make sure that, you know, it's not one way. And sometimes that happens, and sometimes, you know, you have to part ways because it's not the right fit. So it's not always about the images. Quite a lot of the time, a lot of it can be just so much about that working relationship.
What about the influencer market? Has that had an impact on the modelling?
It has. It was something that, you know, sort of even like 8 years ago or something, it was coming through, and you know, brands were sort of asking about, you know, Twitter and what sort of audience and engagement that certain individuals had, and it sort of started with the, you know, bloggers and them doing shoots and collaborations with brands. And you know, it drove me a little bit bonkers to start off with, because I was like, oh, bloggers, and I'm not necessarily models. And the reason I sort of feel that way is, you know, it is a rite of passage, you know, to have the calls where you're getting, you know, you didn't get the job, you did get the job, you go to castings, you know, have the test shoots, you practice. Like, it is a rite of passage to sort of be able to call yourself a model. And I did, you know, sort of started in that industry to start off with, and then it sort of moved to sort of the Instagram market, where content was being produced, you know, and to a higher standard. And even today, you know, a lot of the content that I'm seeing on social media rivals some of the content that I've seen for campaigns we've booked. When I look at the quality, you know, the resolution, the imagination, etc., you know, it's really opened up that space. So what I used to sort of knock as being, you know, just using somebody for their audience, they didn't bring any value to it, apart from an audience, I now sort of see actually it's a really creative space that people are able to get into, and it's actually been really interesting to sort of see that change. And the influencer market, you know, is frustrating, because it's one where, you know, clients will ask about the engagement, and one that we're constantly sort of having to get on top and hound all you guys and tell you how algorithms are changing, and we'll bring you in for a full day of homework. And
I've just about got my head around it.
It'll all change next week. There'll be a whole new policy. But you know, it was one that I kind of, on a personal note, you know, maybe resented for a while, that I was, you know, on these social platforms myself and found it exhausting. But actually, when I take a step back and I look at the engagement that you can get from audiences and how inspiring it can be, I did a talk at an all-girls school in my hometown last year, and they got in touch and they said, you know, they're having a lot of issues with eating disorders at the moment, and could I come in and do a talk about bridge? They think that it would be really inspiring and useful. So I went in and did my talk about the industry, and at the end of it, you had the Q&A, and obviously nobody in school puts their hands up. So you say at the end, okay, I'll stick around if there's any questions, and then half of them stick around afterwards. But a lot of the questions were, who can I follow on Instagram who looks like me, or who would you recommend? And that was a lot of they were asking, they wanted to be inspired.
Yeah.
And so then, that really started to change my mindset, that I was in the school, they were between 12 and 15 years old, and they were wanting to fill their world with inspirational people, and they were just struggling to find them. They were struggling to find people that made them feel more valued in the world and in the industry. So then I really saw the impact that it can have when enough investment's done in it, when people take the time to, put their content and their message out there, that yes, you could look at it one way and sort of think, oh, is it really impacting? It's a bunch of pictures. And then you can go to a school that's really struggling, and they're begging to have that content, and it's not being produced for them on a day-to-day basis. So that was really interesting to sort of experience and see first. It wasn't the questions that I thought I would be getting, but it was it was really, really interesting. So brands see the value in it. I think advertising budgets are moving from billboards to online digital spaces. And as the times are changing, it's all about how many eyes are on what platform. So, you used to get a lot more money as a model doing a billboard campaign, because it would be viewed that would have more exposure and more, more eyes on it. Whereas now, actually, the digital space is having a lot higher level of interaction. So I think the industry, and the modeling industry in particular, needs to adapt to sort of view how the advertising budgets are changing, and where the value is in the content, really. So it's constantly changing, but that's the fun side of it. I think it would be very it wouldn't be as engaging as a market and as an industry if it was just one staple suited all. So it's definitely interesting.
How do you switch off? How do you ever, because you are so passionate about it, and I know how busy and how hard you work, what does downtime look like for Charlotte? Is there such a thing?
Downtime, you know what? To switch off, I have to put my phone down, because it's so easy to get, inspired and caught up in the content on our phone. So really, downtime for me is spending time with my dog. I have a border collie, so spending time with my dog, going for walks with my dog, having cuddles. He's probably the only one, and my partner Luke will probably be very disheartened, but this is the only one who can completely distract me. He's the only one who can completely distract me, because I just love him to bits, really. So I think downtime for me is spending time outside as much as possible as I can. Working in London can be very groggy, so I love sort of going out to the countryside as much as possible. And really cooking, I love, having friends around for dinner. I'm not really, a go out in town kind of person. I'd much rather have friends around, open a bottle of wine, cook food, than sort of go to a nice restaurant. I much prefer sort of my home comforts. So really those are the things I sort of enjoy. And then planning trips. I love travel, which obviously is on hold at the moment. Yeah. So yeah, planning trips, or looking into different cities I haven't visited, or experiences. That can sort of switch my mind off, because all I'm really doing is planning something else. But that's that's how you can sort of switch off from planning one thing and planning one market, is just to plan another passion project. So I'm still planning. I'm just moving my bucket list of places to go to next year. So we'll put that on for now.
Of course, I could have talked to you for so much longer, but the last 3 questions. Do
Yes.
you have a favourite song that always motivates you?
Yes, I am a big sort of soul R&B fan. I love all of those old music. So I love Curtis Mayfield, sort of Move On Up, like anything with brass instruments and trumpets. I used to play the trumpet as a little girl, and I just loved like any brass instruments get me sort of really up and motivated. So Curtis Mayfield's definitely like a big go-to for me to sort of make me feel motivated and inspired. It used to be my alarm clock that I would like time to sort of wake me up, but it got a little bit frustrating for my partner, so we've switched it now. So I think the trumpets were a little bit too much for him to wake up to, so we switched it. So yes, anything with sort of brass instruments in it just it gets me going. I love them. That's one of my favorite.
And what about a book that's inspired you?
I'm not a big lover of fiction, so I love a good sort of how-to book. I love Talk Like Ted, which is based on the TED books, and it's one that I've actually bought for friends and family as well, because I absolutely love it, and I couldn't put it down. And I just found it so inspirational to read, you know, not that I'm doing loads of public speaking events, but I found it really helped me, you know, try and condense, you know, my main points when I'm having conversations with individuals. You know, great to sort of be able to harness those skills and really think about how you present yourself on a daily basis. Like I found that I could really apply it to, you know, different things. So so that's definitely one that still in my bedside sort of cabinet, and then I'll pull back out if I want to feel a little bit more sort of, you know, motivated in how I come across, or how I want to present something, or whether it's you know, a conversation with a friend, etc., or whether it's, you know, anything to do with business. But I really enjoyed that book. I really did.
What about who inspires you?
I get really inspired by athletes. You know, I'm not a very sporty person myself. That's not why I get inspired by them. I think I really love sports psychology. I think the motivation it takes to be an athlete, you know, like Anthony Joshua, etc., who, you know, are at the top of their game, but they have to be so humble and so disciplined within themselves. So really I do just follow a lot of athletes. I read a lot of biographies, because that whole side of sports psychology, like I said, just really has always fascinated me. You know, you struggle to get me to go to a gym if there isn't a Netflix on the running machine. So it's not it's not because I necessarily follow boxing or anything like that. But yeah, I do just tend to follow a lot of athletes like Anthony Joshua, where I just find their approach to the world when they win, you know, great titles, where they're still, you know, really humble, and when you read about their you know, their schedules and their regimes and what they had to do to get their bodies to such a physical state, the transformation. And I think you can see the progress, and they, you know, win titles, and that really inspires me.
It's been so lovely to talk to you and to find out more about you today. It's been a real treat. Thank you. And I can't wait to be back in London and visiting the offices and being with the team again soon.
Exactly. It won't be long now. Fingers crossed.
Yeah. Well, take care of yourself, and lovely to have you as a guest, Charlotte. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rachel. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
So if you think you've got what it takes to be a curve model, then you can always contact Charlotte and find out more information, bridge-models.com. And I'll be back next week with a new guest. In the meantime, keep being fabulous.